A sci-fi folk tune, a sci-fi skiffle, only for the mind of Dr. Brian May. It's 39 on Crown Jewels. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to PLD Projects Presents Crown Jewels. I am your host, PLD, and this is the podcast where I take you through every song in the Queen catalog one by one, including solo efforts, and we decide which version of the song is the best or the crown jewel to put into our ultimate playlist, which is linked below. Of course, it's Spotify. Well, I'm limited to what Spotify has, so if our crown jewel is not in the Spotify library, I will offer an alternative version. I have my own YouTube version where I've uploaded my own unavailable from Spotify lists. But this is where we do that. We also rank the songs on a scale of 1 to 11 and see if it cracks my top 10, which I haven't had one crack the top 10 a little bit. So I haven't actually got a chance to read off the top 10. So I think today, at the end of the episode, I will read off the top 10 as a reminder to what we have now and what possibly could be breaking in soon. First off today, though, it's the song 39. Quick, interesting note. If you were to list the songs in order from the album, from Queen 1, all the way through Night of the Opera, not counting any bonus tracks or B-side or whatever, just the album tracks, the 39th song listed would actually be 39. I don't know if that was planned. I don't know if that was done on purpose. I mean, Queen's a very intelligent band. They might have done that on purpose. I'm not sure. I've never heard anybody confirm that, but it's an interesting tidbit nonetheless. And let's take a look at the versions we're going to listen to today. We do have, of course, the album version from A Night at the Opera. We have the classic albums, the Making of a Night at the Opera version, which is Brian and the guitar just playing. We have some live versions, a lot of live versions. Live in Earl's Court, 1977. The Live Killers version. The Freddie Mercury tribute concert version with George Michael. Return of the Champions, Queen and Paul Rodgers live in Sheffield in 2005. Queen and Paul Rodgers live in Japan from Super Live in Japan. From the official downloads, we have live in Leipzig 2005 and live in Rotterdam 2005. The 2008 tour, we have live in Ukraine. We also have live in Munich and Glasgow from the 2008 downloads. We have Brian May and Carrie Ellis live at Montreux. This is released on the Candlelight Concerts DVD and Blu-ray. Then we have some unreleased versions I want to take a crack at. Queen live at Hammersmith 1979. We have live in London in 2007 with the Foo Fighters. And finally, we have live in New York City at Madison Square Garden in 2014 with Queen and Adam Lambert, because Queen and Adam Lambert have yet to release an official live version. Down below in the description, I have a list of YouTube links for each version. What we're going to do is we're going to pause the podcast when I tell you, go listen to that version, and then come back and I will explain it or talk about it, and we will go from there. I have lots of notes, lots of quotes, lots of things to talk about. But before we do anything else, why don't we get right into it? I want to get right into it. And by that, I mean, click that like, click that subscribe. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think about this song in the comments. Let me know what you think about this show in the comments. Trying to move along, get as many subscribers as you can so we get out to more people. All right, that's my little mini pitch, So let's move on and listen to the first version, the album version, written and sung by Brian May. And there you have it, 39 as written and sung by Brian May. Features Brian on the lead and backing vocals, as well as the acoustic and electric guitars. Features Freddie Mercury on backing vocals only, John Deacon on the double bass, and Roger Taylor on the bass drum, tambourine, and backing vocals. Now, this was released as a B-side to You're My Best Friend, which is where the single/B-side version came from. We're not going to listen to that. I put that in the link for you if you'd like to listen. All it is much more of a standalone version. 39 does tend to, on the album, segue a little bit into Sweet Lady, the next track, although really it's not that big of a segue. So it's there for very slight differences, but I'm not including it in my crown jewels or in my rankings or anything like that. Now, Brian loved this song. This is one of Brian's favorite songs. He actually often lamented that it was never its own single because he liked to think that if he didn't release it as a single, it doesn't get a chance to be a part of the public consciousness. And he wishes more people would have heard this song. It's a tribute to skiffle bands of the day. He loved that kind of sound, that kind of music. But it's also the only song, only rock and roll song I know about Einstein's theory of relativity and also on time dilation and Paul Langevin. It's partially inspired a little bit by David Bowie's Space Odyssey as well, I think, and 2001, which partially, inspired David Bowie. But the lyrics are about a protagonist who goes off in a spaceship. And due to the relativity theory, the time dilation, he travels faster than light, and so when he returns, it's been a year for him on Earth. It's been a generation. That's why it's a sci-fi skiffle, a sci-fi folk song. As a fan of sci-fi, I love it. Love this kind of thing, and makes it even more better than just the sing-along campfire kind of music. It is really. It just adds a little depth to it, which is kind of fun and interesting. But even if you don't care, still a fun sing-along kind of tune. Now, as for live versions, well, the band played it live in the 1970s, but Freddie would take over the lead vocals. Now, I have my own opinion, my own theory as to why that's the case. I mean, Brian, when asked about it, would give an answer like, well, what's Freddie going to do? He's the vocalist. And yet Roger sings I'm in love with my car while Fred plays the piano, sometimes does some backing vocals. So why couldn't he do it while Brian was singing lead vocals? Same time, I kind of feel like Brian was not very confident in his lead vocals. I think that's the real reason. He didn't sing any lead vocals, any of it through the 70s. He had the line of Keep Yourself Alive. Even then, Freddie usually doubled that. It wasn't really until 1986 when they did a cover of Hello, Mary Lou, Goodbye Heart that he performed one verse live. Even later on, when he did his solo tours, he would sing live. Obviously, he said it after Freddie passed, he didn't want anyone else to sing for him at the time. So he would sing all the tracks, and yet he still always said he felt a little uncomfortable. He didn't know what to do with his hands. He wasn't really a front man. I kind of feel like he got to the point where he could do it live, to at least be able to do it and not be too ashamed about it. But that shame's the wrong word, I think, because I think he's fine. But he'd be too afraid to do it now. I think the 70s, I think he was like just more than happy to let Freddie go to the front and let him concentrate on guitar and back vocals. But your miles may vary. If Brian's ever going to listen to that, please call me out. Let me know if that's not the case. Just my own theory from having watched the band throughout the years. But after that, so after the 70s, we're going with Freddie on lead vocals. They would pretty much retire it. Brian would have played occasionally a little riff from it during his acoustic sessions. But basically, it was a retired song until 1992, when George Michael supposedly asked them to do it at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. Now, I think it makes sense that George asked them, because I don't think it was a song they would pull out on their own for that occasion. I could be wrong again, but George used to busk it on the underground, as they used to say. So that's probably why they did it then. After that, Brian did add the a cappella version, a cappella intro, to his own similarly country-ish, rockish song, Let Your Heart Rule Your Head, during his initial Back to the Light tours. So just a really snippet. That's why we're not going to listen to it as far as a rating goes, or as far as a crown jewel goes, because it's just the a cappella chorus intro. There we go. 2005, with Queen and Paul Rodgers, Brian threw it in there almost as a lark at the beginning. Every once in a while, before Love of My Life, he'd throw it in there a little bit. And it was pretty well received, so he just kind of kept playing more and more. But it basically was just him and the guitar and the crowd. 2008, though, they decided to make it a full band effort again, and Brian and Roger would start it. They would use that time to have a breakdown in the middle where they'd introduce the rest of the band besides Paul Rodgers. And the full band besides Paul Rodgers would do the rest of the songs, kind of a dramatized version of the song, if you will. He did go on and play with Queen and Adam Lambert as well occasionally. They did let Adam rest. It was basically Brian and Roger would front the band with the rest of the band playing behind them. Before that, in 2013, Brian May and Carrie Ellis, who he guessed with a lot, or who he collaborated with a lot in the 2010s, beginning of late 2000s into the 2010s. He did it at the Montreux Live at the Montreux Festival, which was released as the Candlelight Concerts Blu-ray DVD. Brian and Carrie doing it there. So yeah, that's the live versions of the song. We're going to listen to a lot of them, aren't we? Now start some quotes. I have two quotes I want to read off. Freddie Mercury in May of 1976, when the Record Mirror told them, it's something that we have. People can't believe it. They can't believe it's us. It's something Brian May wanted to do, and it's very, very unlike Queen, really. I think it's going to be the B-side for You're My Best Friend. It's something Brian wanted to do, and that's nice. In 1983, Brian spoke to Radio 1, giving a little more detail about the song itself. It's a science fiction story. It's a story about someone who goes away and leaves his family. And because of the time dilation effect, when you go away, the people on Earth have aged a lot more than he has when he comes home. He's aged a year, and they've aged 100 years or so. Instead of coming back to his wife, he comes back to his daughter. And you can see his wife in his daughter. A strange story. I think I also had in mind the story of Hermann Hesse, which I think is called The River. A man leaves his hometown, has a lot of travels, and then comes back and observes his hometown from the other side of the river. He sees it in a different light, having been away and experienced all those different things. He sees it in a very illuminating way, because I felt a little bit like that about my home at the time as well, having been away and seen this vastly different world of rock music, totally different from the way I was brought up. And I had those feelings about home. Let's talk about the track that we've heard. Definitely the folksiest thing Queen has tried so far, but man, it's fun, right? It's a fun track. It feels like I'm sitting in the campfire with acoustic guitar, slapping away, having the people around me singing harmonies. It's a fun time. No matter what the lyrics are about, it is just a fun acoustic sing-along song. It's great, a great double bass. John got, I guess he volunteered to learn it, and I guess there was some kind of interesting wager going on whether he could keep it in tune. I guess he won the wager pretty easily, I guess. Brian lost some money on that. I want to say Brian's voice really fits this very, very well. And you're going to hear Freddie sing in a bit, and Freddie can sing anything. But this is what Brian is kind of best at. He's singing some lead vocals before, but as far as like the lead rock tracks, he tends to struggle a little bit. He's definitely much more of that like harmony guy for the rock and roll tracks. But giving him a soft kind of acoustic number where he can kind of like just softly lay his voice over the acoustic bed, it's very, very nice. It's very gentle and actually suits him a little better than Freddie. I'm not going to say it's a better vocal track than Freddie's is, but it fits. It fits Brian May very, very well, is what I will say. Interestingly enough, there is an electric guitar. It's mostly acoustic. The electric guitar is very, it's superfluous in the track. It's not in any of the live versions really, because Brian's not playing two guitars at the same time. But it does add this nice kind of texture. It's very unique to the studio version. It adds a little bit extra if you're looking for it. It does make it sound nice. It's a very nice strumming to it, nice little movement to it. Definitely very unique as far as this goes. I know one of my favorite sections of the entire song is that middle section with Roger's traveling spaceship falsetto. I mean, that's Roger up there. You would think it might be Freddie. It's Roger up there. Roger's voice has a great falsetto tone, and he's really the high part of the entire vocal section. During all the choir parts, it's Roger on top, Freddie in the middle, Brian down low, and wow, Roger's voice is really actually adds so much to it. Interestingly enough, they do have this doubled vocal part right before the chorus comes, which also adds a little more boost to it. Brian basically just sings the main track, and then when it comes to that last line, he adds his own second track to it. Same voice, same covering the same line, just makes a more thicker sound, a little more oomph, a little more focus on that, if you will. And of course, the interesting part at the end, interesting that all the way throughout, they like to play with that panning and scanning like they do. They don't really use it too much in the song until the end. And also, they have the acoustic guitar come back in and just on one part of your headphone, and all of a sudden it comes back in with the full headphone right before it ends. I don't know. It's a fun track. I really do appreciate that. And again, we're not going to listen to the single version at this point. If you want to listen to it yourself, go right ahead. The last studio version we're going to hear is an interesting one. And I'm going to talk about that next week. It's from a thing called Classic Albums, The Making of a Night at the Opera. They had this whole DVD where they talked about the individual tracks. And during this song, Brian basically took his guitar and basically did a solo version of the song, much like he would end up doing in Queen and Paul Rodgers during 2005, 2006. So let's listen to that, and then we'll come back for more. Okay, I know the YouTube link I gave you only gave part of the song, and then it went into Brian talking about it, Roger talking about the song. There is a bonus track from the DVD that actually had the Brian playing the song, the whole full version of it. It's a very extremely relaxed. It's just Brian and guitar. He's not meaning to perform it as far as it's like a performance thing. It's just we're talking about it. I'm going to strum along and play. It's not as great as vocal, but it's a fun listen because it's so unique. It's the simplest version of a Queen song I think I've ever heard, and it's a pretty simple Queen song to begin with. So not much else to say about that because it's just basically we'll talk more about this kind of version when we get to the Queen and Paul Rodgers era. But first up now, let's get into those live versions. Get into those live versions. The first one we're going to listen to was released as a bonus track on the 2011 reissue of A Night at the Opera. This is live in Earl's Court from 1977. Click on that link below and go back and we'll talk about it some more. Alrighty, that's the 1977 live in Earl's Court, released on the 2011 A Night at the Opera Deluxe Edition from Island. It's a great mix, that's what I'll first say. And we're going to listen to Live Killers next, which is notoriously not well mixed. This is a very, very good mix. You'll hear now, though, if you listen now, you hear that you hear what I mean about Freddie versus Brian. As much as I love Freddie's voice, Brian's voice does seem to fit it a little bit better. Doesn't mean that a Freddie version may not make the crown jewel, though, because despite that, the live versions are very energetic and very fun. The band definitely appears to be enjoying themselves. I will note one thing that's an interesting fact is that when they played this song, they actually, all four members come to the front of the stage. And you'd have Brian sitting on the stool with the acoustic, you'd have Freddie singing, Roger would bring a bass drum up and he'd just stand and kick while I played the tambourine and sang backing vocals, and then John would be there with the bass. So it's a nice visual, instead of having the band in their usual spots, all four at the front of the stage during this part, getting to interact with the fans. It's a good version. It's a very good, fun version. Three-part harmony sounds pretty good here, although I feel like Brian's buried a little bit, especially telling that section. You hear Roger in the background. Freddie's very strong on the mic. That points to that particular part of the mix is not that great. But overall, it's a very, very good version, good, solid live version from the 70s. Let's see if Live Killers can beat it, even though we know how much I don't like the mix. We'll see. We'll find out if it does anything for me. I say that like I haven't listened to it a million times before, but as always, I like to listen to it right before I talk about it. So here, click that link below. Come back for more. Well, there's the Live Killers version. Now, if you look at Bob Wegner has a site called queenlive.ca, and on that site, he did a Live Killers analysis, him and a few of his friends, I believe. And because Live Killers was a very Frankenstein effort of an album, I've mentioned that before, but it's good enough to note again that the Live Killers tour produced this Live Killers album, but instead of taking just tracks from different concerts, they would go so far as to split up tracks. Like they'd take three versions of Now I'm Here from different dates and put them together to make one version. I picked that out off the top of my head. I don't really remember if that's the one or not. I was only looking at 39 today. But interestingly enough, having said that, this is a time where it was in fact one whole track without any interruptions, without any patching from different tour dates. This was from Frankfurt on February 2nd, 1979. Now, what's different is there's no real playing around like in Earl's Court 77. Brian had a little intro where he's kind of fooling around before he went in, said, this has nothing to do with anything, and then went into the song. Just goes right into the song on this version. I do think the mix is still a little muddy overall. I still feel that overall. However, that middle vocal line is actually a much better mix. Brian's enough up that you can hear him a little more clearly. Freddie's down a little bit. He still kind of bleeds through, but that kind of happens sometimes live because Freddie's such a strong vocalist. But overall, I think that middle sound actually sounds better in the Live Killers version. Otherwise, it's pretty similar to 1977, although for the most part, the energy feels maybe a little lower than the 1977 version. Until the ending. The ending, we have this great double tempo ending with John going on the bass, doom, 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 running along on that bass. I love that ending. Definitely kicks up the energy a little bit back, a little bit higher, gets the crowd really into it. I do like this version a lot. It's a pretty solid version after all. But that's it for this version, I think. Yeah, let's move on. Then we'll talk about the next version. Live at Wembley Stadium in 1992, the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, as requested by George Michael. And there you have it. That's George Michael, 1992, live at Wembley Stadium at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. He asked to sing 39. He got to sing 39, or at least some of it. More of a snippet, really. It's not a full version of the track, which, spoiler, if you've listened to me before, probably means I'm not going to rank it too up on the Crown Jewels list, because if I want the best version, the Crown Jewel version of the song, well, I'm going to want a full version of the song. That's not to say George Michael didn't do a great job. He sang the heck out of it. Brian, Roger, and John laid a great backing track down. Brian and Roger did some great backing vocals together. It was a very quick version, but I'm sure it was actually pretty fun for the crowd itself. I mean, the Freddie Mercury tribute concert was sold out in a couple of hours without any artists having been announced on the bill, except for the 3 surviving members of Queen. So amongst a slew of greatest hits that we were likely to get, that we did get, it was probably nice for them to get a little bit of a deeper cut here in 39. But that's it for now. Let's move on to our next version. There is, of course, the Brian live at Brixton Academy, which we're not going to listen to. I put it there for you to listen to if you'd like. It's not going to be a version I'm going to rank or anything. All it is the chorus sung slowly, a cappella by Brian, the backing vocalist, as kind of an intro to the similarly themed, similarly country-esque rocker, Let Your Heart Rule Your Head. What we're going to jump to now is the 2005 tour. There's 4 of them down there. I'm sorry, there's 3 of them down there because one of them didn't have a YouTube link, but I didn't feel too bad about that because they're all similar to each other. You kind of get the crux of what's going on. We have 3 versions you can listen to. It's the Return of the Champion, which is live at Sheffield in 2005. We have Super Live in Japan, which is later on in the tour. We do have Leipzig in 2005. Rotterdam, I could not find a YouTube link for. I apologize. But let's listen to those 3 and then come back and talk about this era of 39. For the earth is old and gray, little darling will away. And there it is, the 2005 tour. 4 versions I listened to, 3 versions you listened to. It went in the order of Leipzig, Rotterdam, Return of the Champions, and Super Live in Japan as dates in the tour. And he gets more confident as he goes along, so which is why Super Live in Japan is probably my favorite version of the 4. Leipzig even mentions, like, it was the first time I'm going to try with 2 verses, and he kind of teased it out along the tour, getting more and more performance time and doing more and more fuller versions of the song. Of course, the biggest difference is he doesn't do the middle, which makes a lot of sense, but it's just him and the guitar. There's nobody else on stage. It's just Brian and the guitar and the audience. That middle section is a big instrumental moment with a big choir and everything else. It kind of makes sense to kind of cut that section out and then go right to the end. So it's still not complete version, but still more than George Michael got to do. If I'm going to rank the 4 of them, I'll do it right now. Again, it's probably Super Live in Japan, Return of the Champions, Rotterdam, and then Leipzig in that order. Just gets better as the tour goes on. Now, 2008, it's a different version entirely. Go to do the same tour, a different tour rather, same band members, but they get the full band involved, as you're about to find out. We're going to start with Live in Ukraine, which is the officially released album. We have 2 versions also, Munich and Glasgow, that were officially released as downloads. Let's listen to all 3 of those, and we'll come back for more. 1, 2, 3. Don't you hear my call? Oh, you're many years away. All right, there's the 2008 tour versions. Now, I really love this version as far as I wish I was there for a concert at this point. It's very cheesy. It's very dramatic. It's overly cheesy and dramatic, but it's very, very much fun. I love that it just starts out with Brian on his stool and his guitar. You get Roger sitting next to him with a bass drum and a tambourine. It's just the 2 of them. It's a very pure, most pure Queen thing we can get at that point, given that Freddie's passed and John is retired. I just love that it's kind of like them in the beginning. Of course, when they get to the first chorus, they let the audience sing a cappella, which is a lot of fun, of course, too. The audience really got into it, all 3 versions, really getting into it. And then they stop and introduce the band. They do it in a very funny way, especially as the tour goes on. Brian starts introducing them and saying, like, the things about the musicians. Not that they were looking for the best musicians, hoping to have the best musicians here, but they couldn't show up, so we got these guys instead. It seemed like the band was really gelling and having a good time, busting balls, having fun. But it's great about it when that full band kicks in after the little intro of the musicians all saying 3, 4, and the band just kicks in full and get that full bass, the full drum going on. I love that sound, that full thick sound we have as the band plays together, and I love the addition of the piano / accordion, the piano accordion that Spike uses. In fact, that's one of the more unique things about this. Roger doesn't go for those high notes anymore in the 2000s and beyond. So Spike takes over for the high middle section where there's no vocals. It's just Spike playing on the piano accordion, which is kind of a fun addition to it as well. I prefer the vocals. I prefer a big vocal choir. but I get what they're doing, and it's still pretty effective overall. Some great vocals. If I'm going to rank the three, I probably am going to go. Let me think. I think I'm going to go Munich first, then Glasgow, and then Ukraine. Again, usually they get better as they go along. They get a little more comfortable with the act and the shtick. They have a little more fun there. But I love Munich specifically. I love the he adds some. You hear like Rogers starting this woo during like the when the crowd is singing the a cappella section. It's a fun little moment. I like that. The Glasgow version, the difference there, you hear Roger's voice much more prominently during the harmonies compared to the other mixes. It's just a mix issue, I think. I don't know if that's better or not. Maybe you shouldn't hear somebody else prominently, but I love Roger's voice. So getting to hear him more distinctly does wonders for me. But the version is very fun. The band is a very tight band. Queen has done nothing but have tight bands with Queen and Paul Rodgers and with Adam Lambert. Say what you want about the lead vocalist, the band itself is usually very, very tight. So, yeah, that's when I leave that. I like the 2008 version much better than the 2005 version because it's a full version, it's a full song version. Brian's relaxed version is fun. I take that in a concert, but give me a choice between the two, give me the full band with Brian and Roger going at it. So, all right, we'll move on now to a duet version. A duet version. Brian May and the ingenue of Carrie Ellis, who was, of course, in the musical We Will Rock You, as well as other musicals such as Wicked, My Fair Lady, and things of that nature. Brian really enjoyed working with her on We Will Rock You and produced a lot of her albums going forward. They did a bunch of tours together. One specifically was the acoustic Candlelight and then the Candlelight tours. Basically just him, Carrie. They usually have a third musician, maybe a percussionist, definitely a keyboardist. But this is them doing 39 as a duet. It's kind of nice to hear. So let's go there. Again, click on that link below. Come back for more. Don't you hear my call, though you're many years away. And there we go, the Brian May and Carrie Ellis version live in Montreux, as Brian says at the end. The first thing you notice, it's a much slower version. I don't know if Brian just takes it easy on Carrie's more musical trained voice. I don't know if that's a thing really. I know that Carrie is definitely much more of a proper vocalist, if you would, and not much as much rock and roll. Although she can handle rock pretty well, as you'll find out later on. But it's definitely much more of a laid back version, especially compared to the 2008 versions we just heard, where they really kind of got the tempo up and energetic. Brian and Carrie do sing well together, even if Carrie is far more of a crisper vocalist, obviously a trained in musical theater kind of thing. It's basically Brian's song, though. Carrie really just sings on the choruses, giving it that lead, giving that that harmony that's missing, that was missing from the 2005 version. Though she also adds a little bit of the middle section. She does some oohs that are kind of like Rogers oohs until the middle part where it goes really high. Then she kind of left it to the keyboards as well. This is a kind of a cool version. I like it better, I think, than the 2005 version because it is more of a musically inclined, not just Brian the guitar, which is fine. I love Brian the guitar, but I think for the crown jewel, for the best version, you want the entire musical landscape, if you will. And now we got a few unreleased versions we're going to tackle before we wrap up. The first, Queen live at Hammersmith, 1979. Now you might ask why I'm going to give you another Freddie version, given we already have two officially released versions. Why bootleg? Well, this is barely a bootleg. It's really a very good, crystal clear recording. Obviously could be mixed better, but it's still a very good recording. It was recorded because it was a part of the Concerts for the People of Kampuchea series, December 1979 in London. They had a series of concerts which was to raise money for the victims of war torn Cambodia, organized by Paul McCartney and Kurt Waldheim. Involved McCartney and the Wings, McCartney and Wings, Queen, The Clash, The Pretenders, The Who, Elvis Costello. They all did their concerts, and they released a Concert for Kampuchea album, which included a couple tracks from different artists here and there. But Queen did record the entire gig, and this is from that gig. And I think it's a high energy one. I think you'll appreciate it. So without further ado, let's listen to Queen with Freddie again, live in 1979 at the Hammersmith Odeon. Oh, that was a fun one, wasn't it? A little small intro, not quite the full playing around that he does, but Brian does before Earl's Court. A little playful of Roger's setting up. I love Roger letting out that energetic, yeah! That just causes Freddie to laugh. The whole version is very, very, very high energy. Roger did that a few times during the course of their career. It was a great amusement by the rest of the band. Freddie also in this one does some great alternate line deliveries, which really work. And I love. They sound very strong together. The only problem with this, honestly, is because it is unreleased. It's a mixing thing a little bit. Roger's voice gets buried a little bit, and especially in the middle high section, Freddie's voice is way overpowering it. Definitely could use a remix. The version that's there is there. I mean, it's probably the most energetic version we have. It's probably the most fun version that the band did. So I don't know where I want to put it because it does have some drawbacks. It doesn't commit fully to that double timed ending that they do during Live Killers. John doesn't do it right away, but then kind of like towards the end starts doing it anyway. But it's kind of a weird ending that way. But the energy is superb. So not sure where we're going to rank it yet, but it's definitely one of my favorites. All right, we're going to move on now to the penultimate version we're going to listen to. This one was Brian and Roger often join the Foo Fighters live in concert. Whenever the Foo Fighters were in town, Brian and Roger would most likely be there, and they usually would make an appearance because they're very good friends, as you probably heard during the Taylor Hawkins tribute concert and things of that nature. Dave Grohl, Taylor Hawkins specifically, loved Queen. Taylor grew up listening to Queen. Roger became a great friend to him. In fact, Taylor became the godfather to Roger's son, Rufus. Rufus Tiger Taylor, who drums the Darkness right now, and is rumored to potentially be stepping into Taylor Hawkins' shoes with the Foo Fighters, possibly. I've heard many different rumors going around. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. I mean, I think Rufus would be a great pick. They were very close, like family. A lot of times they started out, they would do Tie Him Up Down or something like Rockin' Now I'm Here. They did a few times. Sure Heart Attack, Under Pressure, they've done a bunch of times together. But this particular occasion, they decided to do 39, which was kind of an odd choice for the Foo Fighters and Brian May and Roger Taylor to do 39. So let's listen to it and see what you think. And there you have it. That's a fun version, you gotta say. I mean, it's a little sloppy. Obviously, the bands haven't played this together very often. Probably haven't played it ever before. They probably had a quick rehearsal. Like some flubs line vocals wise. Get to hear Taylor sing in the last part of it. Brian sang the first part, the lead part of the first part, I should say, and Taylor sang the harmony vocals with Roger. You can really hear Roger's voice on this one, which is good. Taylor takes on the last verse with his unique singing style. It's a lot, but you can see when you watch, especially with the video, you see how much fun these guys are having, and that's all that matters, really, honestly speaking. At the end of the day, you don't look for the best version. This is why this won't be the best version. But I wish I would have been there because that would have been a hell of a time, just having a fun time with them. Dave, Taylor, the rest of the band obviously love Queen. Brian, Roger reciprocate that. They love the Foo Fighters, where Roger and Brian are both always talking about how Foo Fighters are one of their favorite bands of nowadays. They really are family. So yeah, I'm not going to look at too high, but I'm still worth listening to, worth seeing more than anything else to see the joy on the faces of everybody playing along. So interesting version. All right, we're moving on to the final version. I wasn't sure if I should put this in or not, but I figured what the hell. Queen and Adam Lambert tours. Brian and Roger did this song, here and there. They don't do it all the time. Sometimes they do it. They do a version that's pretty close to 2008 version without all the dramatic entries. So it's just a full band version from the get-go, mainly led by Brian and Roger, while Adam's off having a break. So this was at the Madison Square Garden concert 2014, one that I was at. So I figured I'd throw it in there for the hell of it. One last time, Queen and Adam Lambert, Madison Square Garden. Take a listen, come back, and we will wrap up this week's episode. And there you have it, Queen and Adam Lambert live Madison Square Garden in 2014. The first part of the American tour for Queen and Adam Lambert. Much like the Queen and Paul Rogers version, similar, just without the cheesy introduction in the middle, the fun introductions in the middle. The full band version, obviously, it's an unreleased version, so the mix is not there. It's just the sound is just a bootleg sound. Spike Edney comes across way too loud in his vocals in the middle section, but Roger and Rufus together, seeing them together, saying it's kind of nice. Familiarly wise, anyways. Brian's having a good time. It's a great version. It's a fun version. Nothing much specifically to talk about, though. I've already talked through enough with the Queen and Paul Rogers versions, so it is what it is at this point. Well, that's it, folks. We've gotten through every version we're going to listen to. So that means there's only a few things left. We got to pick the crown jewel, the best version of the tracks, and rate the song. Before we get into it, What do you think? What is your favorite version of the song? Let me know in the chat or in the comments, rather. I really would want to know. All right, let's get into it then. Alrighty then. 16 versions to rank. Of course, I did a little sub ranking in there, the 2005, 2008 version. So you know that. But let's get to it. All right, coming in last place for me, the furthest thing from the crown jewel, as it were, is the classic album version, which makes all the sense in the world. It's just Brian May picking up an acoustic guitar and playing randomly in the studio without really thinking about it. It's not the best version of a track. I would love to be there when he does it, absolutely. But we're talking best versions. Brian, a guitar, and no crowd. It's fine. Next up, I hate putting this down here. I hate putting this down so low. This is where the Foo Fighters version goes. Obviously, it's more fun than it is good. That's the thing. I love it. I love hearing it. I love seeing Queen and Foo Fighters together every time they do it. I can't wait to see whatever Foo Fighters go to London. I love that. I love it because I know Queen or somebody will probably make an appearance and we'll get a rip roaring track. But it's under pressure, somebody to love. I'm glad they went out on the limb here to do 39. And it was a fun version, just a little sloppy, not very much in Foo Fighters' wheelhouse, so to speak. I like it, but we're talking crown jewel, best version. All the other versions are much better. They're more rehearsed, more polished, more pretty much everything. Fun value though, fun value. This one might be one of the top. All right, up from there, I hate putting this one down so low too, but I have to. I think it's the Freddie Mercury tribute concert version with George Michael. George Michael sings it great, but it's a snippet. It's a snippet of the version. So I mean, it's not a pure Queen thing, and it's a snippet. That kind of stuff weighs the track down for me a little bit. From there, we have the 2005 tour. Again, because it's just Brian and the acoustic guitar and the crowd. The crowd gives it a little more energy, gives it a little more zest, if you will. But at the end of the day, again, crown jewel best version. I want a full band version if I can get it. So in order, the Leipzig 2005, Rotterdam 2005, Return of the Champions, and my favorite of the 2005 tour is Super Live in Japan. Next up on that list, Queen Adam Lambert, live in Madison Square Garden 2014, which some are going to say is sacrilegious to it. It means because some of the ones that are higher than that. This is a full Queen version, so I do like that. I just prefer the fun zestiness of the 2008 one, I guess, in a way. I love seeing this one in concert. I would definitely boost it up high for me. It's a fun version for sure, but it's just kind of more straightforward. And the band's a little older, although they are tight. I will say the Queen Adam Lambert band, I think, let's put this out on record now. We'll see when I get to it. I think the Queen Adam Lambert band is actually tighter than the Queen and Paul Rodgers band. Although they are similarly both have Spike Edney, Spike Edney the keyboard. But Danny Miranda, great bassist for Queen and Paul Rodgers, of course, and Spike Edney is there. Both again, they did have the extra guitarist Jamie Moses playing with them for Queen and Paul Rodgers. Queen Adam Lambert, though, Neil Fairclaw's bass playing, and he has great vocals, and he's a big Queen fan. He adds a lot to it. I really like Neil's playing a little more intricate than Danny's is, and having Rufus Tyler Taylor or Tyler Warren helping out percussion, it just helps Roger out so much and adds more fullness to the sound. I do love that. It lets Roger sing a little bit more too, which I like. That's neither here nor there. I support this version of 39, probably middle of the pack. It's a solid version. Up from there is the Brian and Carey version. Now, I think I put this one above the Queen and Adam Lambert version, if only the Queen Adam Lambert version is a non-officially released version. So it's a bootleg version. So it's not as well sound-wise. The Brian and Carey version is very nice sound-wise. It's very unique for its own. It's a very unique version of the song with just the duet version with the limited instruments, still more than the 2005, just Brian and the guitar. You get Brian and the guitar, you get Carey singing over the top of them, and you do get a little bit more of the keyboard bass and a little bit of the percussion there as well. It's a fine, fun version. I do appreciate this one quite a bit. From there is where I put the Queen and Paul Rodgers 2008 tour. Live in Ukraine, Glasgow, and then Munich. Munich's my favorite one, the most fun one they do. Roger seems to be really into it at that point. Brian's really gotten into it at that point more and more. It's a fun version, the full band kicking in. Really, actually, I struggled. I almost put this closer to the top, I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be hard for me not to have a Freddie version up on top, whether you have the full version Freddie and John together, because that's Queen to me. So if you're looking at the best version of a song, it's probably going to be the one that the full band Queen did at their peak, so to speak. So that's where I got the 2008 versions. All right, the final four. We got Earl's Court version is next, live in the Earl's Court in 1977. Very good, very nice. It does not have a kind of double time, which I liked at the end, which I like some of the other Queen versions did. It's a solid version. I don't know. I can't say any reason why I don't like it compared to the other ones. It's more that I like the other ones better, if that makes sense. Really, it's just this is a solid version. The 3-part harmony is pretty good. The mix is pretty solid as well. Brian getting a bit buried. I remember I wasn't loving that aspect of it, but it is a solid version. From there, this is where I put the album version, which means I am kind of being hypocritical. I told you all throughout this entire podcast that Brian May's voice fits this song better than Freddie's does. And it does. Brian does. It's Brian's a very folksy singer. Freddie's much more of a powerhouse kind of singer. Big power ballads, big rock and roll numbers. Brian's a softer, folksier guy, so it makes sense that Brian's voice does fit it. And yet, I don't put the album version or a Brian May version as the crown jewel. I guess there's just some other things about the other versions that do make it a little bit better for me. So this is where the album version goes, which means there's two versions left. It's either Live Killers or Live at Hammersmith 1979. Well, without further ado, my favorite and my crown jewel is Live at Hammersmith 1979. It was a tough one between Live Killers and Live at 79. I had to go through a couple different things in my head. First of all, I made the decision, okay, it is a Freddie version, so I'm going to go with that. Live Killers is a, well, this is going to be the first time I ever said this, by the way. Live Killers is a better mix, obviously, than the unmixed Hammersmith 1979. So it definitely sounds a little better that way. But Hammersmith 1979 just has a amazing amount of energy involved. You got the Roger Yeehaws in there. The band goes through it. It's not quite the double tempo ending, which I love in Live Killers, but it does have a little bit of it. And the Roger energy and the Freddie vocal delivery, the different line readings he does, I don't know if it makes it unique, and maybe that's why I love it so much compared to like the how many times I've heard the original version or even the Brian-led versions over the past 20 years. The Freddie version has different takes on the lines that I love. I think he does some great work here, and that's why to me, Live at Hammersmith 1979 is indeed my favorite and the crown jewel. Now, of course, for the Spotify playlist, they do not have the Live at Hammersmith 1979 version. So on Spotify, I will sync in the Live Killers version instead. It's not a bad substitute, not a bad substitute at all. So, all right. One thing left to do, we're going to rate the track out of 11 because we always turned up to 11 here on PLD Projects. Well, I give this a solid 9.5. I really have grown to love it. My wife really loves it too. Whenever it comes on in the car, we have a great sing along to it. I appreciate the humor. I appreciate the folksiness of it. I appreciate the difference in it. It's not like a lot of Queen tracks. So I love that. I mean, I love that Queen breaks genres anyway and does different genres. And this one we don't get to visit very often. But it's a lot of fun. And I love when they play it live. That's definitely why the live versions beat the album version for me, despite the album version being awesome, being amazingly intricate and everything else. But a 9.5 out of 11. Now, what does that mean? Yes, it does. It means for the first time in a while, we have a track that is broken into the top 10. That's right. Kicking out Stone Cold Crazy, which I know a lot of you hard rockers out there might not be happy to hear that. That's going to slide Tenement Funster down from 9 to 10. And right there is where I'm going to slot 39. Now, the remainder, in case you haven't we haven't got to listen in a while, at number 8 would be My Fairy King. At 10, Seven Seas of Rye at 10. In the Lap of the Gods at 10. Brighton Rock, 10. Lily of the Valley, 10.5. In the Lap of the Gods Revisited, 10.5. The March of the Black Queen, 11. And White Queen As It Began, 11. So there you have it, folks. That will do it for this week. If you haven't yet, please click that like, click that subscribe button. If you're listening on the audio podcast, please leave a comment or please subscribe to that as well. And if you want to support the channel more, PLD Projects has a Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects. You can join a bunch of cool people like Austin Cadell, Jeremiah Morris, Maddie Kearns, Brandon Buckingham, Jeff Alterman, and John Mastrina, amongst more. You guys really help me keep the lights on. I really appreciate you. Anything you can do to help is greatly appreciated, even if it's just watching, even if it's just sharing the link, telling other people about it, even just commenting. Let me know what you think. I love to have these conversations. You might think I'm batshit crazy, and I can't, you can't believe I didn't put the album version number 1. You could believe I didn't put the George Michael version number 1. I don't know. Love what you love, right? Well, that's going to do it though for us this week. Next week, we'll be back with a lesser known track from A Night at the Opera. Some of Brian May's, well, definitely one line is very cheesy. We'll get to that though. Track called Sweet Lady. That's the next time. Until then, keep yourself alive, everybody. And God save the Queen. Bye now.